So what's up, people, and welcome to the Mission 79 discussion of Spy Family. So Mission 79 just came out, and as always I will leave a link to this mission that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, yeah, we'll go take a look at it before they pull this mission back. So Mission 79 continues on these side story sort of themes that we have been seeing in many of the previous chapters, and it seems to cover stories that are a little bit off from the main story. But of all the chapters that we have had with regards to these side stories, I enjoyed Mission 79 the most. It was hilarious. And the reason for that can be stated with one phrase: Drunken Yor. Yes, Drunken Yor comes out once again, and that makes this chapter absolutely hilarious. But the other thing I like about this story is that it once again covers a few side characters, and in this case it covers Camille, Sharon, and Millie, the office workers that Yor hangs out with during her day job. And typically they have been coming out and just being a nuisance to Yor. But in this chapter, we're starting to see that things are even progressing in the office. So the mission starts out where we see Millie and Camille working overtime to try to get their job done. And they are becoming extremely frustrated at the sheer amount of work that is loaded up on them. And at that time, Yor comes out to ask Camille if she would need some help. And Camille, of course, taking advantage of anything, absolutely drags Yor in to help her out. And this, of course, brings Sharon in because Millie also needs some assistance. And so the four of them decide to work to try to get those two's workload completed by the end of the evening. And of course they do so. But the discussions that go on between Sharon and Yor at that time are quite wholesome, because Sharon is noticing that Yor is opening up a lot more, and because of that she's starting to become a little bit more normal. I think one of the reasons why these three girls made fun of Yor up till this point was because her personality was so far out that they really had a hard time relating to her. And this of course led to some not so nice comments in the past. But now that Yor is becoming a little bit more open, Sharon is starting to appreciate that a little bit more. And although she doesn't say it in a really sincere manner, you could see the closeness that is coming between the two, and how she herself is opening up to Yor because Yor is becoming much more open a person. Now eventually everything gets done and everybody becomes happy, and Yor is about to go home when the gang basically invites Yor out for a drink. And Yor, of course, thinking that maybe this is a good way to become understanding of what is normal, she decides to go with them. Of course, that is when the story diverts towards Drunken Yor. And because it's with these three girls, the discussion goes to the relationships that they are having with their significant other, of course for Yor being Loid. And the opening conversation is pretty funny because you could see that Camille is criticizing her significant other because he is too easygoing, and she says he needs to be a little bit more cutthroat to be able to get ahead. And of course, Yor being Yor takes it in a completely different manner and starts talking about how you do have to slice off from the neck to be able to take out the head. So she's basically talking about decapitation and the method to do so. And so this becomes funny, but at the same time you realize that she is talking about how to basically decapitate your victim using a knife. So you start getting a very uneasy feeling while you're laughing at this situation. But of course the conversation continues to go on because everybody's curious about Yor's relationship with Loid. And because they are all talking about the faults that their significant other has, they start asking Yor about Loid and what faults he has. And of course, Yor, who admires Loid very much, starts thinking about it and realizing that there really isn't anything that she has an issue with, and she starts mentioning it to the girls. And of course, the girls cannot believe that that can be the case, and the conversations continue to go on where it escalates into the conversations are talking about how they could sometimes kill their significant other because they get so angry at them sometimes. And of course, Yor, being Yor and being drunk, takes that literally. And she starts wondering about, is it normal to really consider killing your partner? Is that how normal it is? If she does not consider trying to kill Loid every once in a while, will they become suspicious of her? Yeah, alcohol does some very strange things to Yor, although even without the alcohol, it might have gone into that direction. And so, trying to fit in with the crowd, Yor starts saying, yes, I get very angry at Loid as well. He does some things that makes me want to kill him so much. And of course, they ask what that is. And the only example that she could come up with is that because Loid wants to keep Anya's diet healthy, he would restrict the use of sugar in the food, and it of course makes her food a little bit less sweet. She uses that as the reason for why she wants to kill Loid, at which case all the other girls go, are you serious? Is that the only reason? And you really want to kill your significant other just for that? And so the conversation keeps on going and escalating to the point where you're seriously talking to Camille about how she wants to kill Loid all the time, and they're at each other's throats all the time. And of course, that is met with a lot of doubt from Camille and the gang, and they start telling Yor, stop being silly. And of course, this makes Yor really worried that they're not believing her in being normal anymore. And so she continues to escalate to the point where she realizes that yes, to save the marriage, to protect the people in her family, she has to go out and kill Loid. And I would be laughing, except that she is somewhat serious about it, to the point where actually the shopkeeper comes out and says, you really want to kill Loid? And she is like, yes. And he's like, well, I guess if you want to do so, then go ahead and do it. And so then we see this huge dramatic scene of a duel between Yor and Loid. And the conversation during that time is extremely hilarious while the situation is being extremely tense. And in the end, they decide to go at each other, and there is a major bloodbath to the point where Anya is screaming for the two to stop. Which, of course, is all in Yor's mind, and she hasn't even left the bar yet, thank God. And she finally comes to her senses, and she runs back to the gang and goes, I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to kill Loid, but I just can't do it. I just can't do it. To which, of course, then the other girls look at her dumbfounded, and from their perspective think that she was trolling all of them, and they end up happily laughing at the joke that Yor brought to them. And so all ends well. And everybody accepts the fact that there is nothing wrong with Loid. Everything is perfect with him. And that they must be extremely lovey-dovey between each other. At which point, Yor again comes to a dilemma because, of course, they are a fake family. And she replies, no, it's not that romantic at home. At which point, the girls start teasing her and saying, yeah, you probably just want to go home just to give Loid a big fat wet kiss. Which, of course, knowing Yor, is met with, there's absolutely no way that we will kiss, and this goes into another huge conversation, at which the end point is that Yor realizes that if you want to be normal, you have to go home and give your hubby a big fat wet kiss. And some of the scenes that came out during the conversation with the girls was absolutely adorable. And it's funny because the girls also feel that way about Yor. And so this was a really good story in which the girls are starting to open up to Yor, and they're starting to realize that there is a lot more to her than what they originally thought. But, of course, from Yor's perspective, now she has to go home and give Loid a big fat kiss, and this results in some seriously hilarious scenes in the story. And of course, we know what happened in the past whenever Yor gets drunk, and it almost results in a kiss. And this time it's no different, except that rather than kicking Loid in the face, she ends up having a mental breakdown and Loid ends up having to catch her. Now, if this was a typical rom-com manga, this would end up with a situation where the two would accidentally kiss. But since this is Spy Family, Tatsuya Endo is continuously teasing and trolling us, and it doesn't end up that way, and Yor does somewhat a female version of Sanji from One Piece, minus the nosebleed. She basically falls flat on her face, and Loid has to rescue her from that. So, yes, as enjoyable as this was, we don't get satisfied with a possible big fat kiss from Yor. But the funniest part may be the very last scene where we see Anya sleepily saying Mama and Papa get so noisy when they get into a kissy-kissy sort of situation. Which, if you take it in the wrong manner, can be some very colorful comment. But most likely, if you think about it in the past, whenever they did get into a kiss type of situation, it was really noisy because it usually ended up with Yor beating the crap out of somebody, whether it was Yuri or Loid. And so this chapter was extremely funny. It was somewhat wholesome, and it did once again open up additional characters that we haven't seen in the past. In this case, Camille, Sharon, and Millie. And you could see that even in the office situation, there is progress between Yor and her friends. And so it's really nice to see this situation moving forward, and it'll be interesting to see how their relationship will continue. Now, with regards to Loid and Yor, well, we haven't seen that much progress here yet. Yor herself is acting very, very strange by herself, but there really wasn't that much of a progress in their own relationship. So we'll have to wait a little bit later to see anything significant in that manner. But it was enjoyable. I did find this one very funny. And I'll be looking forward to seeing if Chapter 80 will continue on with this type of theme of all these hilarious side stories. But this is the Chapter 79 discussion for Spy Family. If you read it, what you think about it, any comments will be greatly appreciated. And until the next episode, happy manga reading, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.